This is Seahawks Stories, 50th Season Edition, presented by Emerald City Athletics.
Welcome into another edition of the Seahawks Stories 50th Season Edition. We are diving into some of the history, the players that you know, the plays that you have relived over and over again, and we're going to tell you stories from a different point of view. We're broadcasting today from the Seahawks Podcast Studio, presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. I'm Jen Mueller, alongside two legends who have watched more football in their lifetime than I have in, I don't know, 2 lifetimes worth? Perhaps. Probably. It's probably how that goes. My broadcast partner, Steve Raible, the voice of the Seahawks, and we are joined by Clare Farnsworth. Clare, 36 years covering the Seahawks, over 700 games. Did I get those numbers right?
Pretty crazy, huh? Yeah. Like I just told you, I covered the Seahawks for basically half my life.
And you've got some stories to tell, my friend.
Yeah.
One of the all-time greats for a long time was with the Seattle PI. He finished his career with the Seahawks, so we traveled. I think we sat next to each other on the plane a few times. We had dinner a few times together. I know the stories are going to be phenomenal, especially since the position group that we are talking about today, it's a fun one. Wide receivers and tight ends.
Very good.
So, this works very well as the Seahawks former wide receiver. And look,
a little something about that.
Anytime you talk about Seahawks wide receivers, Steve Largent is going to be the first name that comes to mind. Sure. I know you guys both have stories about Steve.
And if it's not, you should shut up.
Right. Okay, right. But there's other receivers to talk about. So let's take Steve out of the mix for just a minute.
Which the opponents tried to do for all those years. With no success.
No success. What's the next name that comes to mind when you think about Seahawks wide receivers?
Whoa. A good one.
Mm-hmm.
Dead air. Dead air is not a good thing.
It's deep in thought, folks. He is deep in thought.
I think it's probably, they had a lot of guys that were good. Obviously, you're not going to aspire to Largent-esque numbers, but just the number of players they went through who were unselfish and willing to do whatever was there. I go back to when Tom Capel was the offensive line coach here, and Marshawn was going crazy, and I was doing something on the running game. And, of course, there's Marshawn and there's offensive line, and Capel goes, don't be writing this story unless you're going to point out how well these wide receivers block. If you don't block and play wide receiver on this team, you're not on this team. You're not going to play. So then I go to the players and bounce that off of them, and they're just going crazy. Jermaine Kearse, Doug Baldwin, who am I forgetting? Golden Tate. They were like, I would rather have a good block to spring a guy on a long run than catch a touchdown pass. And that's the kind of mentality you want at what is often considered this gunslinger position in the National Football League.
Why would it be fun to watch a guy like Largent with some of these quarterbacks, some of these schemes?
Because of the way he played. It's funny because when they show the highlights of him, it's all these diving catches and all this kind of stuff. But the thing that always stuck out about him to me was how open he would get. Yeah. And you would just, wait a minute. You'd show the replay and you go, where's the DB? Excuse me, this guy's in the Hall of Fame. You think maybe you should be guarding him? And I remember asking Lester Hayes, remember Lester Hayes, about the all-pro cornerback for the Oakland, wherever the Raiders were, Los Angeles, Oakland. And we were trying to get to the bottom of the Largent thing. And it was funny because the first time we talked to him, he constantly referred to Steve as the Caucasian Clydesdale, which is kind of
I've never heard that.
Yeah, kind of the worst compliment you could give him. Well, they go down there and they play, and Largent lights this guy up. Yeah. So the next year we're talking to him, and he's like, every time he mentions him, well, the great Steve Largent, well, the great Steve Largent, well, the great Steve Largent. And it was, and so at one point we were, I think it was after a game action, I was talking to Lester, and Lester, how does this guy get this open? I mean, look at him. He looks like he shouldn't even be on the team, and he's doing all this stuff, and he goes, I'll tell you, and he stuttered unbelievably bad. He said he's got the strongest ankles of anybody I've ever seen. He can make his cut. He can come in and out of his cuts at full speed. And he says most guys do that. You break your ankle, you fall down. Yeah. Huh. So and that was Steve. I mean, he would do all this. Well, it was the Harden hit in Denver where they knocked him out. I mean, Jimmy Weitzel, who was the trainer at the time, says by the time I got to Largent on the field, he was snoring. Yeah. That's how far gone he was. Yeah. And they bent his face mask, and he still has that dilated eye from the collision. And then they play back here later that season in the Kingdome, and there's an interception by Harden. And who comes out from out of the screen? He wasn't even in the picture. Comes zooming in and just knocks this guy for a loop. And afterwards, he's asked about it in the locker room, and he goes, "Oh, is that who that was?" Yeah, wink, wink. Like he knew exactly who that was.
He forced a fumble and recovered it, by the way. Yeah. Steve did. Steve, and I know we weren't going to talk about Steve yet, but now we're talking about
Steve.
Okay.
Go ahead. We're going down this road now. Yes.
You mentioned, Claire, the what people thought of him as they looked at him, and there are some receivers like that in the league today. And I'm not talking about just white receivers, but guys who you look at them and you say, well, they're not very big and all that. Steve was. He had the most incredible A, body control, B, a great low center of gravity, which is why he could get in and out of his breaks. His legs were really strong, and he could go full speed to a point and put that foot in the ground and break out faster than anybody that I had ever seen. And I recall because I was out there with him practicing every single day for 6 years.
How do you do that?
Exactly, and I tried to do the same thing. And I couldn't. I had longer legs. I was fast. Steve he couldn't beat me in a 40.
Not even close.
Not even close. But he could come out of his break and be from point A to point B faster than I could because of the way he could run routes. Yeah. And couple that with the most intense concentration of anybody I have ever seen. If he had gloves in his first 6 years that the guys are wearing now, he'd have caught another 400 passes. But he never dropped them, never wore gloves. Just the most amazing physical player for a wide receiver, putting all those things together that I've ever known.
And we talked about the humility, and I have a story to go with that. I was with the Journal American at the time, which another defunct newspaper I used to work for, and I was doing a story about him, and I remember the lead. It was Steve Largent is building a Hall of Fame career one catch at a time. So I talked to a bunch of people, including Terry, his wife, and I was asking her about how he remained this nice guy that you wanted to hang out with when he could have just been this raving maniac, look how great I am. She said, I'll tell you a story. She was carpooling, going to school one day, and Kyle and some of the kids are in the back with some of their friends, and they're talking about the Seahawks. And one of the kids goes, well, gee, Kyle, your dad's the best guy on the Seahawks. And Kyle goes, no, he's not. Kurt Warner is. So his own kid doesn't think he's the best guy on the team. And then another thing that I have always loved, when Steve was getting ready to retire, it was going to be the end. 1 year, the team comes to him, and they says, Steve, for everything you've done for this franchise, for the great person you are, here's $1.3 million. Thanks a lot. Have a great last season. If that was to happen now, they would go, Steve, you don't really fit into the plans all that much. You're probably going to be the number 2 slot guy at best. How about playing for the NFL minimum? But it shows you not only how much he was loved by the fans, but how much he was loved by the people in this building that they were able to do that for him. And from my standpoint, accessibility was always huge. I could call this guy anytime, and he would be there for you, and he would answer your questions. And
How about a guy who caught his 100th touchdown of his career, which set an NFL record, beating Don Hudson of the old Green Bay Packers, that record, which had stood for obviously years. Hudson played in the 50s. And after the game...
In Cincinnati,
after the game, the jersey that either would have gone to the Hall of Fame, or he would have, had he played today, he'd find some way, or somebody would have found a way to monetize that. He gives the jersey to Pete Gross. Pete Gross, who was the play-by-play guy before me, actually play-by-play twice before me, 2 times before me, but was suffering from
those
cancer.
Other guys were like between Largent and Tyler Lockett. You're Tyler, he's Steve. Those other guys.
Something like that. But he gave that jersey, knowing that Pete was suffering from cancer at the time, liver cancer. Pete had a little belt, pack on his belt that would inject chemotherapy all the time during the games. So Steve knew that, and so he gave Pete that jersey, and it was just an amazing moment. And that's who Steve Largent. That's who Steve Largent was and is still one of my dearest friends. And we can come together at an event, or Z-Man can call and say, hey, Steve's in town, let's go grab breakfast. And literally we're transported back, even though we've all, families and everybody's grown and we're all old and beat up, and So now the first thing we talk about is our knees and our hips, and then
you relive the good old days.
We can go right back into who we were 50 years ago.
You promised a story about Yoda.
Yeah. Let's see. Which
every
one?
once in a while, you'll throw out that name, and it takes me just a half a beat.
Yeah. Well, he got the nickname. First of all, we had a Halloween party as players, as a team, and Sharon and I came as Dolly Parton and Slim Whitman. Remember Slim Whitman? They all had those old.
And he had those commercials on late at night.
Sharon is Dolly Parton.
Yes,
I'm not really worried about you.
Yes.
I'm thinking she'd be a knockout.
She was. She got this big blonde bouffant wig, and I don't think she'd like me telling this story, but she got a playground rubber ball and cut it in half. And,
oh my gosh!
But that was us. So Steve and Terry.
That was also in the 80s.
That's right. No, this was actually still in the late 70s.
Oh, okay.
Steve and Terry came as Yoda and who was
Princess Leia.
Princess Leia. The deal was though that Steve was Princess Leia and Terry was Yoda. And so they got there and it was so very funny, but Terry's mask of Yoda looked like Steve's face with that big nose and all that stuff. So we started calling him Yoda from that day. And so that's how he got the nickname Yoda, and that's lived with him forever. And I walked into his office in Congress in D.C. back in the day. Seahawks were playing back there. I told him I'm going to stop by and see, and he said, yeah, come on by. So his outer office, there was a whole bunch of Oklahoma folks in there, representing the state. And so I saw him standing back near and he looked at me and he waved, Raves, Yoda. And everybody turned and looked at me, especially his staff. They looked at me like, you're talking to a member of Congress. I said, yeah.
No, it's Yoda.
But I also have known this guy since we were both 22 and played football, and he's always going to be Yoda to me. So that's the Yoda story. The better story for me in 1976. So first year of the team, we break camp in Cheney. We come back to the new facility at Carolyn, which is now Carillon Point in Kirkland, which was then our first facility.
With the weight room in the middle of the dressing room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was small and it was not very good, and we thought it was great because you walk out every day and you're looking out at the lake. You're on the lake every day. So that was pretty cool. So we're out there at the end of practice, and Jerry Rome tells us at the beginning of practice, hey, we got this guy, we traded for him, that I coached at Tulsa last year. Name is Steve Largent. He was a late-round draft choice. I like him. I think you guys will like him. He's a good guy. We're going to see if he can help us. So he flies in direct from Houston after the trade from the Oilers. And he is standing, I don't know if you remember, Claire, there was kind of a back porch off the building that you go down about 6 steps down to the field level. So here's 2 fields out there. We're out there. Practice is over. Beautiful day in August. We're throwing the ball around. Jimmy has us running some pass routes. Steve is standing there, might have been with Gary Wright, might have been with Dick Mansberger, standing on the porch and just kind of looking out. Steve says to me, run a 2, which was a quick slant. Go down 6 yards, plant, cut, stumble. He zings the ball in there. As I'm falling, it hits me in the hands, goes through, bounces off my helmet straight up. I hit the ground, the ball lands back there. Largent turns to whoever was standing next to him and says, I think I can play here. My favorite Steve Largent story ever. And by God, he was right. He played here for how many seasons? Was it 14, 12 or 14? Yeah. Set every record that there was to set. Still standing here with the franchise.
And then, unfortunately, his final game was a clunker. That Saturday game against the Washington Redskins at the Kingdom, and you lost 29-0. See you, Steve.
I didn't remember.
Thanks a lot.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I probably shouldn't do this on team air, but if you go through the best players in franchise history, they all had stinkers. I mean, Walter got beat for 2 sacks in his last game, and it's
way to bring down the party.
Yeah, sorry.
So there's all of our Largent stuff.
Well, and then you were talking about Zorn too, and I go back to this. Remember that hotel we used to stay in when they played the Raiders in L.A. That Century City, I don't know. And
sure.
that theater was across the way.
Exactly.
Well, one Saturday night they're having something at the Dorothy Pavilion over there.
Exactly.
So I'm walking through there, and there's all these people all dolled up, shuffling along, Zorn and Largent. couldn't have looked more out of place, and no one even didn't even look their way. And I'm just going, how does this happen?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my gosh.
But that was them, the two of them.
They drive up
and to this day, you get the two of those guys together, and it's just golden.
Well, I mean, that's what football locker rooms do to you when you've been around guys all your life like that. And there are some of those guys. It's Adkins, it's Jacob, it's all of us who played together for those years, and that will never change. That is always the same. I picture Steve and Jim on Sundays. We'd all kind of pull in. We'd leave the hotel in Issaquah where we were at Holiday Inn, which is where we stayed the night before the games, and we'd drive across the bridge. We'd pull into the Kingdome parking lot, and we'd all get in about the same time. Adkins and I drove together, and Steve and Jim drove together.
In his yellow bug.
In his yellow Volkswagen. We'd park. Fans actually parked closer to the stadium than we did. So we'd walk through their part of the parking lot, getting to the Kingdome where we went in. And everybody, hey, guys, how you doing? Oh, have a good game today, Jim. Okay. Everybody okay? Everybody's good? I mean, it was that closeness that I think has stayed, even though players are a little bit more detached now. But that closeness is what started in those days with now called the 12s. But they've always been the great fans. Oh, Jen, you've got business to do.
I do have a little bit of business this NFL season. Feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Seattle Seahawks. With premium noise cancellation, you are in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you're in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones.
They're going to get us some of those, right, NASA? They're going to get those for us. As freebies,
and you'll get to hear this
as
guy.
gifts.
And I'll get to hear Steve Raible even more clear in my head on game day.
That really must be annoying for you to hear us up there
all
talking
the time.
like that.
I think I've just come up with all of your little isms, and I just sound like you guys because I hear you all the time. You know what else I hear in my head? Bobby Engram.
Oh, God.
The Seahawks' second facility, when I first started coming around the team. So this would have been early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Bobby Engram was on the team, and as you know, like greatest slot receiver ever, just also super nice guy. And that building was a little bit of a maze. Like it was just kind of an awkward
Northwest
building.
College?
Yes.
Yeah.
And one day, I don't even know what I was doing. It was after practice. I was done. I'd helped to hold the microphone. And Bobby's walking down the hallway, and I said, what are you doing? And they had, you could see the meeting rooms. Like media was allowed to walk, and you could see their meeting rooms. He goes, well, I was just getting in to go, I was going to go watch some film. Everybody else was kind of gone. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'd be interested in that. And he said, oh, you want to come in and watch some film with me? And so Bobby showed me how to watch NFL film, and we sat there for about 20 minutes or so, and he was like, okay, here you go. Now you rewind it, and then you do this. And to this day, he's gone on. He's coached. To this day, it's one of those like locker room stories, but like you see him, you get a hug, you say thank you for, the stories, the interviews, the help, and those guys have just been awesome.
And the watching film stuff, which you can relate to. I remember Cortez when he made that, when he came in he didn't know what the hell he was doing. That first game he played in Chicago, he's in the locker room just shaking his head. Cortez, what's wrong? And he goes, man, he says, I got to get me some technique. I'm throwing my best college moves at these guys, and they're just swatting it back at me. So Nash gets with him. So his game improves. And by the middle of the next season, Cortez, what's happening? I mean, you're obviously better, blah, blah, blah. He goes, points at Nash. He goes, I used to watch film. This guy taught me how to study film. Yeah. He says, do you know you can pick up tendency by watching the way the guy puts his hand on the ground? I went, I did know that, Cortez. And it's amazing you made it this far in your career and you don't know that. But it's great stuff.
Well, as a guy who was that slot receiver for a while, when we never had more than 4 receivers on the roster when we played. And there was a season I remember that one of the guys got hurt. And so it was just Steve Largent, Sam McCullum, and myself. And we played a lot of, in those days it was called blue formation, 3 wide receivers. So took the tight end out and put me into the slot. So I have an affinity for those guys who run that slot. That's why I love Tyler so much. Bobby Engram was the best I've ever seen at understanding how to run a pass route, where to settle it down. In those days, too, we didn't have options like they have now. Now they can run, and you see the zone and the guy's taking the outside zone, you can settle down right here. It was basically you keep running, and then the quarterback sees where the defense is, and he's going to throw you the ball before you get outside. So it's a little different today, obviously, than it was then. But the thing about Bobby for me was, Bobby's late daughter had I can't remember exactly what it was that she had.
Yeah, neither can I.
It was sickle cell.
Yeah.
She had sickle cell, and it eventually claimed her life. And we talked about that a lot. And one of the things about sickle cell is joints that ache and irritation and swelling and things like that. Well, my wife has rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. A lot of the same symptoms, different disease. Bobby and I would talk about it all the time. And he would bring to practice, and then after practice, he'd come over to me and, here, I bought this today. It's really working for little Bobby was her name. Let Sharon try this. See if it works on her elbows or on her joints. He was just that kind of guy. Just the most marvelous human being, and has gone on to become a great coach. One of the things I think he learned from Mike Holmgren was that the key to being a good coach is not what you know, but what you can translate to your players, what you can teach. And as you knew Mike so well. We all knew Mike so well. The first thing he will tell you is, I was just a history teacher. I love coaching, but I was a history teacher. And so the teaching part of it was the most important part for him. And Bobby certainly learned that and has become just a great teacher of wide receivers. One of my favorite people ever in this organization.
Yeah. I remember saying to him one time, I haven't seen a guy on this team get open like you do since Largent. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And he says, well, those are trade secrets. So not now, but come find me when I'm done playing, and I'll let you know.
I said the same thing. I said the same thing to Tyler when he first started, and then I said it to Doug Baldwin.
Oh.
Yeah.
And he's probably on your list.
He's got a special place in my heart. Also, if I don't call him my favorite, I'm in big
Doug
trouble
Baldwin?
with Doug. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I quickly became C with him. And he was like, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to call you C. Doug, you can call me anything you want. What a quality individual that guy was.
Such a great human being.
My granddaughter, who was very young at this time, and I was still working here, we came here one day, and we were, because I worked here, we were walking around, we were in the weight room and all this kind of stuff. We're walking along this catwalk. Doug comes up, and this is my granddaughter, and he reaches down to shake her hands, and she does that thing where she goes behind my leg, and sorry, Doug. And anyway, she leaves like, Satya, what's the deal? Why wouldn't you shake that guy's hand? And she says, do you see the size of his hands? He would have crushed my hand. But he's a great guy, and he's part of the. Well, remember he comes in as a rookie free agent.
Yeah,
he's leading the team in receptions.
Yeah,
what's this all about?
Yeah.
So we're all gathered around him and we're asking him and blah blah blah. And somebody's asked him about if he played with a chip on his shoulder, and he says, "Yeah, I do, and I also have that little man syndrome that you're always hearing about. And if you don't believe me, go ask Richard Sherman." So no one else goes asking Richard Sherman, so I walk over, introduce Richard. Hi, I'm Bob. Because he's a third-string cornerback who played 1 year of defensive back at Stanford. We don't need to know this guy. So anyway, I bring that up, and he unloads these unbelievable stories about Baldwin when he was in college and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, okay, we got to get this guy in the field just so we can talk to him. He was unbelievable. And I'm sure you remember this, that Trufant got hurt. What was the other guy's name? The guy that was Trufant's
Walter
backup.
Thurman, right? Was it Walter Thurman at that time? No.
No, it was Walter. God, what's his name? Anyway, I can't remember his name. He got hurt.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, this is going to be dreadful. They're going to put this kid from Stanford in there who played 1 year a cornerback. He was too skinny. He was too long.
Yeah.
This is going to be a disaster. They're going to throw touchdown passes on this guy forever. He gets in there, and you're just like, and you must have noticed the same thing, I think because of his wide receiver background.
Sure. Yeah.
They quit throwing deep on him because he would lock onto the ball before the receiver does. Yeah. I'd be sitting up in the press box going, they'd be throwing the ball, and I'd go, Sherman's got it. And I think, like, Art Teal was sitting next to me and go, no way. No, he's got this thing. And he would go up over the guy. And
it was one of the things that we talked about in our last conversation with Kenny Mayne, and we were talking about running backs and quarterbacks. The final preseason game of his rookie year, we could tell Russ was the guy. We knew it. All you got to do is watch him. The same thing was true
Doug.
with Richard.
Yeah.
And Doug, too.
But we just had to get him out there and get to see him.
Exactly. And that it just shows you what John and Pete and those guys saw in these young guys. Now, did they think they could have gotten what they got for the price they got them at or where they got them at? Probably not. That some of that is just luck.
Pete told that story where he had to sit on Snyder because he wanted to take Russell higher.
Yeah.
And he goes, calm down now, calm down. We'll take this guy in the third round and we'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what was cool about all of that is, yes, talent evaluation certainly played a role, but it was also all of the same type of guys who had a chip on their shoulder, who had similar experiences, who were similar age. Not only did they grow up as football players, they grew up as men with families, and it was just really cool. It's not often that you have that, where there's such a turnover and there's so much opportunity. And, of course, that was the first couple of years of Pete, right? Like, those locker room settings were pretty tense because there was people moving in and out every week. And then they finally, I mean, you would remember that.
What was the first year? What was the number?
Oh, it was 200
Oh,
something.
my gosh.
Yeah, it was insane.
It was stressful, and you didn't know who was going to be there. And it was just kind of like this, oh, my gosh.
And they give you the thing, this guy was just released, but he just got signed on Tuesday, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, we never got to see you, but thanks anyway.
Yeah, he was Doug was a good one. All of those guys were so good together. Doug, so, you know, you're going through preseason, and we're all focused on different things in preseason, right? We get to that final preseason game. It is clear Doug Baldwin is going to make the team. It is also clear I have not spent hardly any time building a relationship with Doug because there's about a bazillion guys in camp. You don't really know. Like, that year was particularly hectic in where guys were going to fall out. So it's post-game interview. I'm like, well, clearly, I don't remember what his numbers were, but it was clear he was the post-game interview. And I walk up, and the first question is fine, and the second question is I couldn't even tell you what I asked because I lost my train of thought halfway through, tried to pick it up. And I'm sitting there going, this is the worst interview ever. And Doug just looks at me and answers that question as if I had just asked the most brilliant thing in the entire world. He might have even said, great question. And I'm just like, you saved my bacon on this one. He was like, no problem, I got you. And I was like, great. From now on, you and I are going to be best buds. The only time he turned me down for an interview, he broke his tooth off during a game. I can't remember which loss. And I said, man, I could really use, I could use your help. You're one of my go-tos. And he just opens his mouth, and he was like, I can't. And he didn't have half of his front tooth on there. So the only time he ever turned me down for an interview.
Well, and I always like to look at these guys, too, with that sort of view of, okay, they were fine football players. Who were they as people? What have they become? Doug Baldwin. I mean, what can you say about all the stuff that Doug Baldwin has done? Building facilities for kids who need places to go after school, making sure they get fed. I mean, he's just a remarkable person in the community. So as we are here approaching the 50th season of this franchise, we look back and we tend to think of the players as players. But these men, what they have meant to the community, and, mostly here in Seattle, but to the communities they ended up going back to or left here for, it just shows you the quality of people that have been through 3 buildings now and have worn however many different colors of jerseys, but always it's been that Seahawk logo. Well, not even that Seahawk logo, but similar to that Seahawk logo. Yes. That's to me has been really remarkable.
Well, like Baldwin, you were talking about what a great interview is. I'm up here one day, and it's like Martin Luther King Day. I'm going, hey, can you do something on Martin Luther King Day? And I'm, what am I supposed to? So I go down the locker room. Doug's in there. I'll ask Doug. I'm sure he has nothing to say. Doug, I wanted to ask you about Martin Luther King Day. Oh, he says, that's great. And I said, why? And he goes, my mom was huge into Martin Luther King. Above the toilet in our bathroom was his speech, I Got a Dream.
Oh, wow.
So he says, every time I'm standing there going pee, I'm reading I Got a Dream. And and you want to kiss the guy or at least hug him.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Doug. This is fabulous.
I'm sure what Dr. King thought about all that. But I guess it worked. When I did TV news all those times, there was some big news story that had to do with police. It might have been Rodney King, maybe something later than that. No, it had to be later than that because it had to be 2000. King was back in the early 90s. Something happened. Anyway, it was big news, and we did a big special on it. And I asked Doug to come down to the station and be a part of this roundtable discussion on police and minority affairs and the rest. And that was the first time he told me that he had been arrested driving through a white neighborhood in Florida in a big car. It was his dad's car. And he said, I got stopped for no other reason than because I was an African-American young kid in a car. And he said, let me tell you, that stays with you. That sense for, I didn't do anything. And yet his ability to move beyond that and to say, yeah, okay, I got a chip on my shoulder because people don't think I'm big enough or fast enough to play football, but also because people maybe look down at me for a whole lot of other reasons, and I'm going to prove everybody wrong. And boy, he sure has.
He sure did.
Just a remarkable human.
And an impact in the community.
Yes.
Heck, I mean, all of these wide receivers have had an impact on the field, off the field. And I think you guys sharing some of these stories are going to have an impact on the listeners and just some of the things that they have not heard before. So thanks for kind of opening up your old school playbooks and taking us along for the ride. I know I haven't heard some of those stories.
If we're nothing else, we're old school.
Especially old.
And I bless him and bow down to him for it.
As I do you,
as I've been telling everybody that will listen to me today, this is the kind of stuff I'm into. I like old history stuff, you know. I went to college to be a history major.
Claire,
you know?
that's because you are old.
And now
you are as old as history. That's why.
Older than dirt, I think.
That's right.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, you can tell that we don't have any fun here at all. No. I do hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the Seahawks Stories 50th season edition. We'll be back with you next time.